Sup nerds, I'm CuppaJoey. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not new, this setup is probably looking a little different to just my voice and maybe a little animation that you're used to. If you're not familiar with trans culture or trans people in general, then something as small as a space between words may seem like these are just the SJWs wanting to police language yet again. However, it is a transphobic dog whistle, and in order to understand that, I think it's best if I explain what a dog whistle is first of all. A dog whistle is a phrase, symbol, or sign that seems innocuous and pretty harmless on the outset, but once you scratch the surface, you realise that they're actually signalling an opinion to people who actually share that opinion. A good example of a dog whistle is the OK sign. Yep, the OK sign. Joey, what? That's just the OK sign. These wild SJWs won't let us do anything anymore. You see, the thing is that this is why it's called a dog whistle, because it seems harmless, and it seems like it's something that if somebody did get upset about it, then they're being completely unreasonable. However, it's what that is actually supposed to signify that makes it a dog whistle. It all started on 4chan, because of course it did, and it was called Operation OKKK. Essentially, tell the SJWs that this means white power. We have the W here and the P here. That means that anybody using this symbol is clearly a white supremacist. They went out to, flood forum boards and posts and social media, essentially saying, hey SJWs, this is a racist sign. If you see anybody doing this, they're a racist. Which, nobody really actually believed. It didn't catch on until it did catch on. And then it was actually used as a way for white supremacists to signal to other white supremacists that that's what they are. This symbol was even used in court by the Christchurch shooter who, in March 2019, committed a mass murder at 2 mosques where he killed 51 Muslims. This symbol was used by an Islamophobic mass murderer to signal to other white supremacists that he is a white supremacist. Once it actually starts to be used that way, it's no longer a joke, and then that becomes a dog whistle. So, how does this relate to trans people versus trans people? Well, when I see this phrase used a lot, I often make the joke that it makes us sound like we're some kind of D&D race. When you look at the various different races that you get in Dungeons and Dragons, as well as other tabletop role-playing games, a lot of the races are described using a compound word like lizard folk, merfolk, or rat folk, all of which are described as humanoid, but they are not human. Which is precisely why the name of races such as ratfolk, lizardfolk, and merfolk are compounded in such a way to differentiate them from humans. The reason that it's dehumanizing is that trans, in this sense, is being used as a prefix rather than an adjective. And trans, when meaning transgender, is an adjective. So, we're going to roll the clock back a little bit and we're going to be talking about very basic grammar in English. A prefix is something that is put at the beginning of a word to give an idea as to what that word is going to be about. For example, inter is a prefix which is used in interface, interact, interchangeable, meaning between. Trans, when a prefix, is to do with change, going from one thing to another. Therefore, transgender means changing gender. But why does a prefix compared to an adjective make a lot of difference? Well, it's like saying tall women instead of tall women, or large man instead of large man, such as myself. The word trans is used as an adjective to be short for transgender or transsexual, but not with any other words where the prefix is trans. For example, me and many other trans activists will argue trans women are women. trans men are men. However, you would not say transparency is parency, because it doesn't make any sense. Because when you use it as a prefix and then take away that prefix, it doesn't quite match up. That's because it's being used as a prefix in that sense. However, if you were to change it to its adjective form, it would be transparent windows are windows. Which nobody's arguing, because it is obvious that transparent windows are windows in the same way trans women are women. Trans people are people. Look at me. I'm just a fat loser sitting here with my Snorlax. I mean, I would say that this is like, is this the kind of strange, inhumane, abnormal, morally depraved behaviour that we get up to? Like, I just want to fart and watch Doctor Who without getting any crap for it. Now, of course, there are some people that are just confused about the correct terms to use. Is it trans women or trans women? How do they prefer to be called? And of course, with language ever changing, it can be confusing to some people, which is why it is so effective as a dog whistle, because they can just blame it on confusion. And it is definitely a dog whistle when you look at how it's used in context. For example, trans women. Now, I'm going to be using this as an example a lot because the majority of transphobia is transmisogyny, and it is a sad fact that trans women are attacked a hell of a lot more. I will see the phrase trans women, one word, used in the context. Trans women are not women. Trans women are trans women. If a trans woman, meaning a changed woman or a changing woman with a prefix, is not a woman, then it only makes sense that a trans person is not a person. And that is what it's all about. It's such a slight, small thing, but it completely takes away our humanity. As you can see from the unfortunate screenshots that I've managed to collect that are on screen right now, it really didn't take me all that long to find various examples of gender-critical people saying trans women aren't women, they are trans women, which makes the interpretation that therefore trans people aren't people even more self-evident. Now, some of you may be thinking, Joey, you're still making a great big fuss over nothing. Why do people have to use it in its adjective form? Why is it implying that trans people aren't people? And the thing is, like I've said, there are some people who are either confused or, when I looked at the phrase trans people, there were the odd person saying, you just don't support trans people because you're transphobic. Which, of course, fair enough, they are trying to be on our side there. However, the vast majority of people who use trans people as one word, and especially those who use trans women as one word, are deliberately doing it in a malicious way. They are doing it in a deliberate, dehumanizing way. And that's simply because if you look at their whole social media, there will always be tons and tons of anti-transgender tweets. It's also a discussion that I've got into before. I have explained a few times, by the way, this is an adjective, not a prefix. It's actually grammatically correct because they respect grammar way more than they respect our humanity. So when I say it's actually grammatically incorrect to say trans people or trans women in that way, and that it is to be separated because it's being used as an adjective, I get things like, no, I don't want to use it that way. To me, it's grammatically correct. Yes, I actually had to me, it's grammatically correct, which, I mean, I don't know, Snorlax, I've not really come across that before. Which, you know, and the thing is that as a linguist, that is the whole reason that I made this video. If you are new here, then you may not know that I like language, and I speak a few polyglots. Oh, excuse me. Anyway, my linguistic background was the whole reason that I wanted to make this video in the first place, because I kind of have that understanding as to why it's dehumanizing and why it is deliberately dehumanizing as well. That is the thing that just astounds me throughout this, is that it is a deliberate dehumanization. If you still doubt me just a teensy bit, then take into account this particular tweet on the screen right now. It's mostly trans people and trans activists that have been sending sexualized abuse to JK. There has been very little condemnation of that abuse from the trans community. By supporting the trans community without condemning the abuse, you are tactically agreeing with it, I'm afraid. Now, of course, if I was going to be unpacking this tweet, I would be here for hours, because there's just so much crap within there. What I would like to draw your attention to is the use of trans people as one full word, and then trans activists as well as trans community, which sends a very clear message, but it's also very dog whistly. Trans activists are activists, of course. People who are transphobic aren't going to deny that. The trans community is a community, they're not going to deny that either. However, when it comes to trans people, they certainly want to deny that we are people. If they just found it more grammatically correct, as is one of the arguments that I have heard, then surely it would be trans activists, trans community, used as a prefix consistently. It would be consistently incorrect, but at least it would make sense as to why they're saying that they're using it. However, where you can see it clearly being understood as an adjective and being used as an adjective, but being used as a prefix for people, that juxtaposition speaks volumes. Of course, it's also worth mentioning that in this person's bio, they have rest in peace r/gender critical and hashtag I stand with JK Rowling, hashtag I stand with Maya Forstater. So this profile is pretty much 100% dedicated to anti-transgender tweets. There was a tweet from a TERF and it read, "I don't want to grant them the space. I don't want to give them that luxury. I know that it's supposed to be trans women and not trans women, but if I give them that, then I am sacrificing something." It was just so bizarre to see somebody that upset about calling us people. Yeah. Look out for this use. Look out for this phrasing. And if you're still thinking that I'm talking shit, and that's fair enough, you're entitled to your opinion, but if you still think that I'm talking shit, then just go onto Twitter. Search for the phrase trans people, all one word. Search for the phrase trans women, all one word. Even search for the phrase trans men, all one word. We're not the main targets, but we're still targets. And just have a look at the profiles of the people that are using this phrasing. And even so, regardless of all of this explanation that I've had to give to say why we deserve to be called people, which is just not the kind of discourse I ended up thinking I would be making close to Christmas 2020. However, if you look at the profiles of the people using this phrasing, you will see nothing but anti-transgender, gender-critical, transphobic tweets. So I feel like that speaks for itself. And regardless whether you think that we are being ridiculous or throwing a hissy fit or whatever over this phrasing, I just think that I really shouldn't have had to make this video. Anybody who says that they're using that phrase and will refuse to put a space in between an adjective and the word person, they're deliberately dehumanizing us, okay? They know damn well what they're doing, and they have said, no, we don't want to call you people. It kind of makes you sound like you're not these weird, creepy perverts. It's basic human decency, but when push comes to shove, you don't need to show human decency to people who you don't consider to count as people. And that's it for this episode of Transphobic Stigma. Let's go. Hopefully I won't have to make too many videos like this in the future. I do plan to do more recording with my face. I have a couple of episodes that I'm writing currently. One that I feel like a little bit of talking to the camera like this is good. If you don't like my face and you want me to go back to the animations, I will be going back to the animations soon. I'm very sorry to plague you with my face. But I would like to thank you for taking the time to watch this, especially if you aren't trans, because we need all the help we can get.